So let's get to our module of the week and bring in Martin Anderson Klutz, a senior solutions engineer at Acquia and a maintainer of a number of Drupal modules and recipes of his own. Martin, what do you have for us this week?
Thanks, John. Have you ever wanted to use AI to help populate entity fields that were left blank by Drupal content authors? There's a module for that. It's called AI Interpolator and was created in September of 2023 by Marcus Johansson of FreelyGive. It has a 1.0.0 RC4 version available, which is actively maintained because that was released in just the past month. It does also have a security coverage, or that's to say, again, it's opted into security coverage, but won't technically have that until there's a stable release. It does have test coverage and a user guide for documentation. And there are 18 open issues, none of which are bugs. And according to Drupal.org, the module is currently in use by 94 Drupal sites. Now, in scientific fields, interpolation is the process of using known data to extrapolate or estimate unknown data points. And in a similar way, this module helps your Drupal site provide values for fields that didn't receive input based on the information that was provided. Fundamentally, Interpolator AI provides a framework and an API and then relies on companion modules for processing, either by leveraging third-party services like AI large language models or PHP-based scripting. There are existing integrations with a variety of AI services, including OpenAI, Dream Studio, Hugging Face, and more. You can add retrievers to help extract and normalize the content you're processing, for example, photos from an external site, and other tools to help normalize and optimize the content and media, as well as optimize any prompts that you will be using with AI services. You can also extend the workflow capabilities of AI Interpolator, for example, using the popular and powerful ECA module that we've talked about previously on this show. But let's talk about AI Interpolator. And maybe, Nick, why don't we start with you, since I gather you've actually used this one yourself.
Yeah, so I've been using this module. It's not in production yet, but I've been using this module for a client for about a month, I think, maybe a month and a half. And I have to say, this module is great. Well, I should say this suite of modules is great. Really, what it allows you to do is on a per field basis, you can create AI rules, right? So, or integrations with some of these tools. So, for example, one of the tools that we're using on this project is we're getting we're uploading files, and we need to take the data from that file, and then we need to parse it using AI. We're trying to collate some data based on files. And so the first thing that we do is we use integration with Unstructured, which is a API that basically will take any PDF, any kind of document that you can throw at it, or at least that I've thrown at it so far, and convert it to either HTML or Markdown or plain text. And then you can, run some sort of AI tool on that field and get the output that you want. I have to say, it is RC. So I think when I started using it, it was beta, maybe alpha. So there were certainly some rough edges, but Marcus is super responsive. He was very, very helpful with providing some updates. I would say there are a couple of fairly minor limitations. So, for example, it doesn't have yet, although I suspect this will come at some point, it doesn't yet have an easy way to swap out backends for individual rule sets. So, for example, you can very easily switch from using ChatGPT to using Fireworks AI, but then you have to go to each field and kind of reconfigure it to use the different endpoints, right? You can't just, like with Augmentor, I think you can kind of just check a couple boxes and we'll use a different one. That being said, I also think it's really important to mention that a lot of the people behind a lot of the AI tools in Drupal.org right now are collaborating together on the new AI namespace. So it's very likely that this specific module will go away shortly, but a lot of stuff that this does, as well as I think the module that Kevin Quillen works on, and I don't want to speak for you, Martin, but I suspect the Augmentor AI team will probably start moving over there as well. This module itself will probably go away, but a lot of the tooling that went into it will move over. Before I open it up, there's one other thing that really impressed me. Like every time I wanted to do something, it kind of just did it. Like you can provide weights. So, for example, we have a workflow set up where you upload a file, when the system sees that file exists, it runs one process. When it sees that field get filled out, it runs another process. And then when it sees that field fill out, it can, do another. And so you can set weights to these, and you can set it up to use a batch. You can set it up to do it on save. You can set it up to do it with a queue, right? If you do a queue, you obviously have to have a queue processor, but like it's so flexible and it's pretty intuitive. I mean, it's complex. It's definitely at the level of like ECA for like initial setup and that kind of thing. But once you figure it out, it's it's not unnecessarily complex. It's complex because it's solving a complex problem. But I think it's a great module. I'm a huge fan. It solved a problem for us that we were starting to build kind of manually in hours or days that we were planning on spending weeks, if not months, kind of manually building.
I want to just quickly follow up on what you just said, Nick, which is to say, I've noticed that in the AI Interpolator issue queue, Marcus has already been referring to basically that AI module is like version 2 of this one. So, I think it's pretty clear that, his intent is to shift focus over there, and that's going to be the place where you'll see major improvements on the current functionality.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our show. Mike, where can folks... Just kidding. So let me throw a scenario out there, and Martin and Nick, you can tell me if this module is capable of helping in this, right? So like I make a blog post and I really despise creating images for my blog post. Like, can I type my blog post out, hit save, and be like, and have it just go and like generate an AI image and put it into the content for me? Or into a field for the blog image for me?
Yeah. Yep, you can. So at least that's my understanding that you can. If you can't with this one, I know that you can with Augmentor in the OpenAI module.
No, that's one of the actual examples.
I'm
that's
pretty
like
sure this one
number
can
2
too.
example.
Clearly, I didn't look at the module page for this before I asked that. But
unless you're Nick, you need to reserve more than an hour or two to get through the beginning of this use of this. I only had an hour or two, and I tried the simplest things, and I did not succeed. That, of course, is a common experience for all of us with complex situations of all types, but it does take some time. I couldn't figure out, and maybe Nick, you can help me. How do you figure out what's going wrong when something goes wrong? I mean, like I got no results at all.
I would suspect that the first place to look for you're integrating with services. So the first thing I would suspect is, do you have most of these services are paid accounts? So if you don't have a paid account, you can't get an API key.
My open API key was in there and accepted, so I could use, and it's a paid account. So that was, I mean, everything was acting like that was okay.
Yeah, so that's the first thing. The second thing is these are, and this was the piece that was a little bit unique that took some effort. This is triggered off of a base field, which is not the same as a base field in Drupal terms, and I don't know, a target field, I guess you would say. So for example, you would have a body field, and then you would have an image field. And when you edit the image field, you would then configure it and say, when somebody fills in the body field, take this information and generate an image for it. And you have to put that in the prompt, but you also have to make sure you pass the context. Like I said, it definitely could use a passive UX. It took a fair amount of effort, but like I said, once it clicked, things just kind of started working. But like I said, the biggest problem that I found with it is it's really difficult. And I don't know how you solve this, but it's really difficult to iterate, because many times when you're trying to for example, when you're trying to figure out the correct prompt for something, you end up wanting to run that prompt over and over and over again. And in this case, the prompt is part of the field settings. So you end up having to edit the field settings and then go edit a piece of content to see if it generates properly. So the development loop, I'm aware of the playground, so we ended up using that as well. But when you're moving from the playground to Drupal, that feedback loop was slower than I think would be ideal. But hopefully now that a bunch of different AI teams in the Drupal world are working together, maybe that can be improved upon.
he has a website called Workflows of AI that kind of points you in the directions of all the different things that you could do. It's kind of a search and figure out what you could use, but it's an interesting approach to trying to make these possibilities more accessible.
Yeah, he has dozens of videos that are worth looking up just to see like the kinds of things that you can do with it. Like some proof of concepts that he wrote just completely blew my mind. Like he has a proof of concept module where you upload a screenshot of a component you want, and it generates the paragraph fields for you automatically. And he built it based on Bootstrap, so it builds the Bootstrap styles for you, and then gives you kind of like a point and click uh, system for like adding things like animations and things like that. And it just like he wrote that proof of concept in the beginning of the year. I think it was like 7-8 months ago. Like completely mind blowing stuff that I think very much should be part of Starshot, which I think he's interested in connecting with as well. But I have to say, the things that this module can do and the things that Marcus has been prototyping are just mind blowing. And it's one of the, I think it's going to be one of the things that allows Drupal to continue to differentiate itself in the world of AI. Not to take too much away from the show itself today, but because Drupal has a really well-defined configuration system, AI can parse that and understand it in ways that it can't. Yeah, you can build a site with AI today using Wix or something, but wholesale systems or like content systems are really difficult. Whereas AI understands Drupal YAML, it can build web forms through a chat interface, and then you can deploy those. So I'm just seeing some of the videos that Marcus has put together. Your mind will be blown.
And
I think
again, that module was AI Interpolator.
Yep.
For anybody that may have lost track. What were you going to say, Martin?
I was just going to say, I believe I've heard that Marcus also has a proof of concept where you can upload a hand-drawn sketch of the web form, and it'll, build out the YAML and create that as an entity for you.
Wow. The one the web form one I saw was the chat interface, but it was just like, not only did it build it for him, like he could like, he's like, hey, I need a web form that does this thing. It built it for him. Like, okay, I need to be on this URL and I need to do this. Oh, you missed this thing. Please add this question. And it just generates it. And it's not like hacking together PHP. It's using web form, like the best form module on the planet, I think. Right. And, then you can just export that config and
core contact forms just died a little bit inside. I'm not going to lie.
I mean, core contact form has a place, but web form solves a whole nother problem. So yeah, I think some of those demos are some of the most mind blowing stuff that I've ever seen.
So before we move on, does anybody else, when hearing the name Hugging Face, just think of one of those aliens from Aliens? Totally. Yes, everybody's shaking their heads. Okay, cool. I'm not the only one. Perfect. Wonderful. So, very topical module. Obviously, we have a lot of strong feelings about it. I suggest you go try it out yourself. Martin, if folks wanted to connect, suggest a module, chit chat about this module, how could they go about doing that?
We're always happy to chat about or receive nominations for the module of the week in the Talking Drupal channel of Drupal Slack. And folks can also reach out to me directly as ManClue on all the Drupal and social platforms.